Oh, hi! I didn't expect you this early. Come on in. I was just trimming up my serifs. It's the modern thing to do. There's a whole debate about it, actually. Studies have shown that fonts with serifs are more legible and readable. Other studies show that they're, not. Really, the only takeaway I've found is that if serifs make a difference to how readable a font is, it's such a small difference that nobody should really care. But minimalism is trendy right now, and I don't want to appear outdated or stodgy, so here I am. Plus, I've got big plans for these bad boys. Fry them up with a little garlic butter and pesto. Yes, I do like that better. It's a much more respectable F. It's a shame that most people don't give more thought to fonts. I mean, you've probably been culturally conditioned to hate Comic Sans, at least. If you're intractably frugal, perhaps you've sought fonts that use less ink to print. By the by, Century Gothic is the best candidate out of those that come standard on your computer. But there's a litany of free eco fonts that you can find online which are specifically engineered to use less ink. Or toner. If you're frugal, you probably use toner. Typeface design is a massive, wild, thriving ocean of artists, hipsters, designers, scientists, and people who are just straight up horny for letter shapes. I've only just dipped my toe in, and already I've started using words like ascender and descender and cap height and glyph. I've subscribed to 3 different typography adjacent subreddits and generally become even more insufferable to be around. But there is some genuinely fascinating stuff going on under the surface. In preparing for this lesson, I expected to overturn a stone and find a few unique ants to point out to you, but I've accidentally overturned a stone and found the entrance to Narnia, which is Narnia, but if the kerning was screwed up? Okay, kerning is the... Okay, very quickly, let's talk about the anatomy of a typeface. If you're already a font nerd, you're probably writhing in your seat because I've conflated fonts and typefaces several times, and we're barely even 3 minutes into the video. Let me clarify. A font is a set of letter shapes at a specific style and size. So Arial 14-point italic is a font, whereas a typeface is just a general set of letter shapes. Arial, that's it, that's the typeface. Makes sense, right? You know who messed that up? Steve Jobs. When he designed the first Apple computers, he mislabeled typefaces as fonts, and then everyone making computers after that just kind of copied him. So now we all use the word generally wrong. And I'm going to continue using the word wrong, and if that's going to be a problem, then I cordially invite you to go fire truck information sign, filled circle, solid shield, gift, big solid block, big solid block. That's right, I'm fluent in webdings. There are a multitude of parts to a font. Everything has a name. Individual letter shapes are called glyphs. Parts that stick up are called ascenders, and parts that stick down are called descenders. Spaces inside letters are their counters, and the strokes that enclose them are their bowls. Letters have ears and spines and arms and shoulders and hairlines and tails and spurs, and they can smell love, and their haunting songs echo through my dreams. Font size is measured in points, which is a rather arbitrary seeming unit. 1 point is roughly 1/72nd of an inch, which means that a 72-point font will print out at about 1 inch tall. Adjusting the spacing between lines of text is called leading, because back in the day of typesetting, they used to use physical lines of lead to separate the lines of text. They used lead because it was the squishiest toxic metal. Kerning is adjusting the individual spacing between letters, like I mentioned before. And in fact, one of the subreddits I joined is r/chemming, which includes many funny examples of kerning gone wrong. Typeface designers can use all of these different aspects and more to create bespoke fonts for whatever they need. Vox has an amazing video on the typeface Cooper Black, which, once you know what it is, you start to see it everywhere. It's got a lot of very clever design quirks. It's probably my favorite font. YouTube has made their own font too, all based on the aesthetic of the lines of their iconic play button. Really, many big brands have done similar things to varying degrees of onanisticity. A quick mention on the topic of lascivious fonts. I have to show you Body Type, a font designed by Filipino graphic designer Julius Raymond Advincula. It's a font he created for a design challenge where he found himself sprawled out on the floor, half naked in front of a mirror, slathered in Mediterranean crude and trawling his bare skin for glyphs and symbols. The font he created doing that is, it's wet. Anyways, weird and aesthetically creative designs are cool for typefaces, but I find purpose-built fonts to be more interesting. Like in 2013, a Korean designer named Sang Moon, who did a stint in the NSA collecting information, created a font called ZXX that was designed to be unreadable by computers. The real-world practicality is limited. For now. It's still a neat idea. More recently, in 2018, a group of researchers at RMIT in Australia created a font that's supposed to make you smarter. It's called Sans Forgetica. And it looks like garbage, on purpose. The idea was that if it's harder to read, you had to pay more attention to it. It's like the Rock Lee method of learning. But the first peer-reviewed study, done in May of 2020, discovered that it doesn't actually have any positive effect at all. It's like trying to become a better chef by only doing your food prep with a baby fork. I realize that those two examples are fonts that didn't serve their intended purpose, but there are plenty that have. Dyslexy is a font created in 2008 by Christian Boer, a dyslexic man who realized that he had a tendency to flip, mirror, and rotate letters when he was reading. But he noticed that this did not happen as much with three-dimensional objects. So he designed Dyslexy to have weighted bottoms and asymmetrical glyphs so that the letters would look unnatural when rotated. Dyslexy has won multiple awards, helped many dyslexic people, and has held up to scientific scrutiny. But perhaps the most highly engineered font, the most rigorously studied and tested one, is a font that you've seen everywhere, but probably given absolutely zero thought. The Federal Highway Administration Standard Alphabets, or as the cool kids call it, Highway Gothic. This font is everywhere. It's the official road signage in the United States, it's used widely across the world for road signage, and it's also pretty old. It was originally created in the 1940s and officially adopted by the FHWA in 1948. The origins of its creation are a little bit murky, but I've managed to trace a lot of it back to the work of one super nerd named Dr. Theodore Watson Forbes. And what a font it is! I mean, look at this thing. It's got so many odd qualities. The ascenders and descenders on lowercase letters are lopped off at an odd angle. That's a trick to make it so it's easier to recognize individual letters at a high speed. Look at this lowercase g. That's got to be the weirdest, most impotent looking little g, but it's unmistakably a G. That tail is lopped off and so short, it's like a little bobcat tail. The T has this little scooped foot at the bottom, which is cute, and also makes it easily distinguishable from the lowercase f, which has a curved top and an absolutely flat bottom. Another thing you might notice is that the letters like to huddle together. The horizontal space is rather compressed. And that's intentional. In fact, in a supplement to the MUTCD, that's the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, 862 pages of pure thrill, the rules about letter spacing are exhaustive, down to 3 decimal places of an inch between each letter. This font was built to be legible. It needs to be, because it is literally a matter of life or death when you're careening down the highway at 60 miles an hour in an aluminum box powered by lit dinosaur farts while Billie Eilish whisper screams at you from the walls about how she wants to bed your father. That was your exit. But Highway Gothic has a problem. Halation, which is a fancy word for bright light make letter no good for looking at. Cars have headlights, an important safety feature. They also have turn signals. That's not related to halation, I just thought it might be important in case anyone watching drives a BMW. When a car's headlights strike a reflective road sign, an effect called halation can occur, where the edges of letters and symbols appear blurry as the light reflects off of them. This can be dangerous for obvious reasons, especially for drivers who already suffer from vision problems and older drivers. The letter shapes of Highway Gothic did not account for halation well enough, some people thought. So in the 90s, research began on a new font. Better, faster, stronger, less palatable. The goal was to change only the letter shapes of Highway Gothic to account for the halation issue. And they began creating the font. But they found that changing letter shape alone wasn't enough. The glyphs of Highway Gothic were perfectly legible. So instead, they decided to make the font 12% larger and different letter shapes. In 2003, a new font was born, and it was called Clearview. Clearview featured more open letter shapes, larger counters for you font nerds, and in my opinion had a generally friendlier aesthetic. It also represented a massive increase in legibility, with one independent study showing that Clearview improved recognition distance by 12%, which is roughly 74 feet, meaning that you could read a Clearview sign from 74 feet further away than you could read a Highway Gothic sign. 74 feet doesn't sound like a lot, but at 60 miles an hour, that's nearly an extra second of readable time. And in highway safety, every second counts. Now, this was only for white letters on a dark background, what is so joyously called positive contrast. In negative contrast scenarios, which would be dark letters on a light background, Clearview was actually much worse. But for being better when white lettered, the FHWA gave Clearview interim approval to be used on road signs all across the United States. The reception was generally positive. The public liked the new Clearview signs. They said they were better and easier to read. I'm not sure if anyone specifically praised the inhalability of the signs specifically, but they seemed to like them. The press interviewed the developers of the Clearview font, and they tooted their own horns for being such clever, special little font boys. And 39 states ended up adopting Clearview for their road signage until January 2016, when the FHWA put the slam on them. January 25th, 2016. The Federal Highway Administration canceled the interim approval for Clearview on road signs. Now, was the FHWA just salty because they liked their Highway Gothic so much? Were they mad because Clearview cost $800 per license? Did they just think the name was dumb? No. It turns out that Clearview didn't actually make that much of a difference. The problem was, and this is so stupid, when they did the testing for Clearview, they were comparing brand new, bigger Clearview signs with pre-existing old and grody Highway Gothic signs. And 2003 was also the time when signs were made with a new retro-reflective material, which was brighter and caused less halation. So did everyone have to tear down all of their new Clearview signs? Nah. The FHWA just said that any new road signs had to be manufactured using the good old Highway Gothic. So for the next 2 years, any new road signs are made with Highway Gothic once again. Yeah, I said 2 years. In 2018, Congress forced the Federal Highway Administration to reinstate the interim approval for Clearview. I tried to figure out why, but all I could gather was that people liked it, and Congress made them do it. The FHWA was not stoked. As much as I could infer from reading a bone-dry government agency memo, they were being a little bit salty about it, and I quote, "Notwithstanding the reinstatement of this interim approval, FHWA makes no recommendation or endorsement of the Clearview letter style." Scathing. In the end, Clearview is not much better. It's not much worse because it's only allowed in positive contrast. It's just different, and we can have it again. Yay. So what's the takeaway? Well, if you're ever on a long drive and you're sick of playing the alphabet game, you can play the fun new road game that I've created called Clearview or Highway Gothic. The rules are simple and you can play by yourself. When you drive past a Highway Gothic sign, you say, "Ah." And when you drive past a Clearview sign, you say, "Hmm." And if you ever drive past a sign in body type, you've died and gone to hell. Thank you for coming to today's lesson. My name is Mason Amadeus, and I hope that you learned something. Something about fonts, their engineering, their history, the beauty that goes into every creation. Fonts are a well-engineered device, and we make use of them every day. I'll see you next time. Oh look, it's our set designer, Window Matt. Hello, Window Matt.
Hi.
Thanks for designing our beautiful set.